My entitled parents have wrecked every birthday since my sister was born. They let my sister blow out my birthday candles and get all my gifts. I broke down and told my parents the truth after 8 years of suffering. My entire family has now supported me and turned against my parents for their terrible behavior and blatant disdain for my well-being. I'm also amazed by the events. The following happened. I turned 18 and am now independent. I'm 10 years older than my sister. She was at risk of dying from an unwanted pregnancy. I wasn't told anything about my mother's second pregnancy. I know it was so hard on her body that mom couldn't conceive when my sister was born. She was hospitalized several times that year. My mother nearly died during birth. She and my father became quite connected to my younger sister because she could have never been born. Since then, I felt like a household kid. I needed a free caregiver. I believe my parents are mentally ill for failing to notice the impact of their long-term partiality on me. Consequently, it's echoing back. Starting with my 11th birthday, my parents wanted my sister to blow out my candles because she was 2 and cried at a different birthday cake. I was forced to participate by my parents, who relit the candles for me to repeat the process after her. Totally damaged. It happened again the following year, and so on. They enforced it until it was standard. My sister also had to buy me birthday gifts. I never got any of her possessions. When I asked why, they said I'm a man and boys don't care. Although I was a child, did they think this was the smartest or most suitable way to speak? I disagree. My parents always choose a place my sister wants to go on my birthday, not mine. My sister started celebrating 2 anniversaries a year, whereas I didn't. In addition, my parents lived for my sister. Any endeavor I wanted required my sister to share my passion. It was vetoed, unless I could finish it alone. I eventually get accustomed to. I isolated myself in my bedroom with my video games, which did not seem to bother me. That is, until my sister wanted to enter my room and upset me. Thus I always locked the door. I was an unhappy adolescent who was tired of being interrupted at all times, and my parents wanted me to delete it. However, I panicked. My parents disapproved of me being naked in my room, and my sister kept coming in. When I stressed its absurdity, they agreed to let me keep the lock. Due to constant pampering she received, my sister developed a major royalty complex. Additionally, she was very demanding. I separated myself from her as much as possible. I used whatever excuse to avoid her, even if I had to lie for fun. I had more free time because my parents hired a teenage girl to babysit. Due to my sister's inability to listen, the caregiver resigned, and my parents tried to deny her salary by claiming she performed poorly. My parents fulfilled their responsibility to the girl after she enlisted others. They then hired an additional woman to provide regular childcare, and she stayed. However, my parents instructed me to supervise my sister whenever I was available. I tried to stay busy, especially in my part-time job. My sister commanded my moves as her personal attendant. I rage at the mention of her ridiculous moniker for me, which she would never stop using. If I failed to meet her needs, she would cry and call our parents, which would get me in trouble for mistreating her. This led to several major controversies. After I refused to give in, my parents and I spent a long time in silence. Nonetheless, during my graduating high school, they bragged to other parents that they had me work hard. They were partially right, but their rationale was not the genuine one. I worked hard to be free from my parents. My parents seemed to have done much. They may have done so before my sister was born, but afterward it was all about her. I was not asked about my academic experiences until parent-teacher conferences. My graduation average was B and C. My parents took me to a place where my sister always had more fun than me, even though the vacation was for my 18th birthday in July. Despite my involvement, the situation worsened swiftly. Birthday. The event didn't seem to focus on me, and I wanted to eat at my favorite restaurant. Despite being the only local Chuck E. Cheese knockoff, the celebration was held there. Thus it became the default celebration location for major events like my high school graduation. I told them my sister would enjoy the sight more than I would. Since half my age kids were holding parties, I was bored. I had to eat bad pizza and play old arcade games and claw machines to get tickets for bad rewards. Cake time came, and my parents gave me a pink cake with white flowers. Even though it had my name, the cake was clearly not for boys. My parents lit the candles and set them in front of my sister to extinguish. It happened then. I saw all my pent-up wrath in one moment. I started crying uncontrollably. I cried in front of my family at 18. Time seemed to freeze due to collective trauma. I stood up and let out the words I had been holding back for 8 years. The whole family watched. After finishing, they sat outside the family automobile. Several relatives followed me out to apologize and said they didn't know about the pink cake because my parents had covered it till serving. I said their ignorance was immaterial. Little Miss Sunshine had ruled my life for 8 years while they watched. No real anniversaries or celebrations happened to me. They were focused on her, and on my most important birthday, they expected me to smile and nod as normal while they gave my sister a cake made for her, even though it wasn't her birthday. Some of them apologized, but they said they assumed I agreed with the scenario. Because my parents said so. I said I was never comfortable with it, but my parents made me do it every year until I appeared to like it. After my parents disapproved of my sister's candle blowing, they barred me from bringing any of my friends. A year has 365 days. Was it so bad to want a relationship focused on myself rather than her? I am mocked as an entitled, greedy child who wants my own birthday. Then I cried ugly. Then my father came outside to chastise me for the big noise. My mother cried, and my sister was upset I ruined her moment. All the guests thought my parents were uncaring. I yelled at him, saying they're bad parents and he should know. After I stated that, the family descended on him like a pack of dogs, which was new to me. My father was almost surrounded by the restaurant's entrance, and most of my grandparents stayed with me to repent for their passivity. After 30 minutes, my parents emerged. I don't know what they talked about with the restaurant personnel. They looked downcast as they returned, still sniffling my mother. After sobbing, and neither parent looked at me. They reluctantly apologized and suggested moving the celebration. This was insufficient for the audience. One of my uncles scowled in the crowd, and my parents said my younger sister could never blow out my candles or give her gifts, birthday, or center it around her. Another snicker followed my parents' apology. Receiving a cake that was clearly not for me, and that they thought I no longer cared for cake at my age. Yes, it was wrong to say. I was furious again and exclaimed that my age didn't matter. My sister was given my birth date without reason, and they knew. Since it was too late, I said the celebration couldn't be rescheduled. They clearly show that I am unimportant. Coming anniversaries. What to expect from him? Angered by my statement, my father kept quiet when the family yelled at him. My granddad told him I'm right and they can't fix the harm. My parents were cruel, made me the black sheep, and played favorites once my sister was born, he said. Each person self-destructed by allowing the situation to unfold. I deserve more than contrition. My existence was owed back. My mother had another breakdown and tried to approach me while apologizing and crying for my name. However, I blocked her approach, and half the family did too. I abruptly left because I couldn't take it anymore. My relatives sought and found me. I was so upset that I could hear my family members cursing and yelling at my dad. I was unable to feel joy for any justice after this. Where was my sibling throughout this event? She was alone in the restaurant eating cake and unwrapping gifts for me. In case anyone wondered. My parents offered her cake after I left crying. Not doing so seems to have been their main priority, yet they were later condemned for it. My grandparents urged me to relax and wait in their ancient minivan, while everyone left the party. My sister had a huge tantrum and crushed one of my gifts against the wall after being caught opening it. She was not allowed to keep it. A new smartphone was given. She got it months earlier. A new phone for her birthday. My grandparents let me stay the night since I was raving about never celebrating my birthday again. I avoided talking to my parents after returning home. My mother was always crying because I wouldn't talk to her, and my father was just as uncommunicative. My grandparents invited me to dinner the next weekend. When we arrived, a new party was waiting for me, which surprised me. My parents said don't hate us during the occasion. A big chocolate cake with 18 candles and a banner with my name. They called it my joyful belated birthday graduation party since I didn't get either this year. I had to act delighted, but one excellent party does not undo or even diminish 8 years of favoritism. Additionally, where was my sister? She sat at the table with her arms folded and lip twisted, as it wasn't about her anymore. Instead of happy birthday, they sang happy day. After I extinguished the candles, my sister screamed loudly. My parents had to transport her? After leaving, she returned looking even more upset. She pouted quietly in her seat during the party. I lost a new smartphone and other goods she had from the prior party. Smartphones were not the only cause. The whole family helped me buy a car. I fell in love with the classic white Volvo at first sight. Grandpa knows cars and repairs them. I was thrilled, but my sister's shriek showed her distress. She threw a fit and demanded a car. My mother had to accompany her to the restroom and couldn't leave. My father reverted to defeat. My sister had ruined their family-wide image. My parents told several family members that their parenting had made my sister a pampered, princess-like brat. I started using it immediately. Vehicle, but my sister hammered 2 side windows a few days later, making it undrivable. Our parents stopped her from doing more harm. She screamed like a lunatic when they grabbed her and took the hammer, and she tried to bite them. My sister ruined the car after my grandfather had spent a lot of time and work on it. Severe rage episode. The incident infuriated my grandparents. My sister was so favored by my grandparents that she couldn't imagine my having something she couldn't. Several family members also blamed my parents for raising an entitled sister who expects the world. Their failure to discipline and teach her respect will ruin her adulthood. However, she was penalized. My sister was sent to boarding school at the start of the new year and suspended for the summer. Although my mother cried like a baby, my father was insistent that it was the only way to repair their damage. Certainly, they admit fault. Since no one supported them, it was hard to resist. My sibling is in severe distress at that institution. She hates rules and clothes and lies practically constantly. Since cameras are everywhere, she can no longer get away with it. Our parents tried to visit her many times, but she screamed at them for putting her in that condition. My impression is that this may be her academic career until 18. I'm glad my parents didn't pay for my car repair. It appears that an auto glass business changed the windows and windshield lately. My father told me in August that he got me a job at a friend's company. The work was 40 miles distant, so I had to leave my parents' house unless I wanted to commute. However, completely in favor of moving. Finding one's first home was harder. Credit card clearance was necessary for studio admission. However, I bought it and moved in September. My folks keep trying to reach me, but I rarely talk. I feel weird and uneasy when we talk. My grandfather believes they are afraid to admit their parental failings and are expecting to improve their self-esteem by appealing for my pardon. However, I will not. Capable of absolving them soon. After finding bliss, I left them, leaving them without everything. Without my sister or me, my parents had to work more hours to pay for her boarding school. Their party and automobile modifications cost too much for me to comprehend. Their only possessions are labor, furious relatives, and an empty house. I'm not amused by my enormous anguish, it's their fault. Thus the issue? They deserved it? This story is agonizing. How ludicrous can they be? Their entire life was focused on their daughter and ignored their son. Spoiled infant was allowed to run the household. Additionally, the child may have raised the parents. Additionally, this is unbearable. What were they thinking when they mistreated someone? The act is unjust and disgusting. I'm so glad the original poster escaped the family, most especially their parents. I love that his extended family helped him at the right time. That was it. Because his parents didn't support him. However, the story ended beautifully, and I hope the original poster finds happiness and peace. I hope they never have to connect with their parents again, because they don't seem virtuous and the original poster doesn't need so much energy. Despite being able to buy a home, my entitled aunt and her family are using my parents' address to get low-income accommodation. My father's siblings and their families emigrated to the US 4 to 5 years ago. My father applied and paid all fees. Upon arrival, he helped them find housing, work, and schools for their children. Despite all he did for them, his siblings acted as he had done nothing. They also kissed my father's younger sibling in the US. States. They thought my younger brother could help and my father's help was superfluous. The younger sibling deceived several of them, a captivating story. However, 3 weeks ago, one of my aunts and her oldest son Kay, asked my parents to put their address in their low-income application. Housing in my parents' city. My father said they can use the address, but won't put their names on utility bills. My aunt and Kay asked my parents to help their family, but my father said he had already done so earlier this week. This time, the housing application required my father to name himself my aunt's landlord. Kay unethically told my father to sign the document and then finish it. No, my father repeated. Kay's mother asked why they're applying for low-income housing instead of buying. Previous discussions indicate they have enough money for a down payment. 2 family members work as engineers, including Kay, are employed. Therefore, they make a good living. Kay hesitated since it would require a loan and interest, something his religion forbids. This is true, but my mother saw that Kay and my aunt were lying, which would harm their religion. They fabricate their residence and circumstances. The application would include my aunt, her husband, and a daughter. However, Kay would live there and earn enough to erase them. Kay and my aunt left. Given their self-determination, my parents may be advised to delete the application. Neglect family. Like usual, my father's family is self-centered and forgets the time and money we've given them. What right does it take to visit one's family, ask them to sign a document without explaining its purpose, and lie to the government about one's housing and finances? They would be disqualified instantly for faking this form and evicted from their home since Kay refuses to pay a mortgage loan, despite being an engineer who can afford it. Overall, this behavior is terrible. The original poster is also left with a bad taste in their mouth for being so cruel to their parent while rationalizing their acts with their religion. I think this is very offensive. I applaud the parent for exerting his power and refusing to reveal his name or address for unnecessary low-income housing. Instead of defrauding the federal government to get inexpensive housing, these people should stand up for their principles. I appreciate your attention. After subscribing, click the chime to activate notifications. Use the playlist at the top of the description to finish all the stories. Use the cream of the crop music next time you livestream. For copyright-free music for your next stream, search Spotify or your choice platform for cream of the stream.